Welcome back to Layered Dress YouTube channel. In today's class, we're going to learn how to make this beautiful corset dress with side godet. You can see the godet is like a multi-layered godet with different types of fabric, and it's a very simple tutorial and truly beautiful as we have seen. If you like to learn this, kindly stay tuned till the end of the tutorial. Thank you. So I'm going to start by drafting my half length, which is a corset. I'm doing this because I don't want to have any seams on the main bodies. Okay, so I'm going to draft the corset and then I'll attach it to the lower part before we reconstruct it. We have a lot of tutorials on the channel on corsets, and I don't want this to be too long. That's why I didn't even want to show it at all before. I'm just going to show a little bit of what I'm doing. So here I have, this is my chest line, this is my bust one, my under bust, and my waistline. Here I've taken my bust, my waist dart. I took 1 inch on both sides, and then I connected that to my bust point here. So here again I divided my shoulder by 2, and this bust center line, I connected it to the shoulder point just like we normally do. Like I said, this is a corset, so for the center line of the corset, I determine how deep I want this corset to be. That's totally up to you. I think I used about 8 inches or so. Okay, this is around 8 and quarter. I want it a little bit deep at the center. So here I came in by 1/2 inch, and I did the same thing on the bust point line, and I made this straight line. So from there, this is going to have a sleeve attached to it. So on my armhole area, I measured 1/2 inch downwards, and then I connected that to my neckline. So here the next thing I'm going to do now is to create my first cup. Okay, so this is my first cup side, and then for the second one, this is where my actual measurement stops. That's my bust measurement. So from there I'm going to come in by 1 to 2 inches. You can make it like 1.5 inches or even 2 inches. Then from there again I'm going to connect to form my second bust cup, which is like this. So you can see now that I have my corset. So here I'm going to tighten the upper part of the corset, and for that I'm taking a dart of 1.5 inches. So I'm sharing this between the two, and I'll have 0.75 on both sides. Again, I'm going to connect this to the bust point for the two sides, and the 1.5 inches that I have taken here, I'm simply going to extend this line and add the 1.5 inches back. So now I'm going to redraw my armhole line. Sorry, this marker is a bit thick. Okay, so here again I'm going to, okay, so I've extended it, and the next thing is to take my waist measurement. The waist is 34 divided by 4 is 8.5. So here I'm going to mark my 8.5 inches, and then I'm going to add my seam allowance to that. So sorry, this is a bit rushed. If you want a slower tutorial on corsets, I just uploaded one on the channel recently, so it's exactly the same thing. You can check that out. So now this black part here is what I am going to cut out now, so you can see. Okay, so after cutting it out, I'll simply close this dart before adding it to the skirt part, because like I said, I don't want to have any joining on the lower part. So for the back as well, you can see I have drafted my back bodies as well. This is my zipper allowance, this is my dart. So the only thing is the neckline as well. So for the armhole area, I'm going to come down by 5 inches, just like I did for the front. I'm going to come down by 5 inches, and then I'm going to connect that to wherever it is you want your armhole to stop, your back to stop. Okay, so if you want it really low, you can stop here, but I'm just going to come up by 1 inch from my armhole, and then I'm going to connect to form like a U neckline, and then I'll extend to my zipper allowance. So here I'll also cut the side and close the dart before transferring to the lower part. So this is the half length for the front, and this is the half length for the back. So like I said, I'm going to close the dart, and then I'm going to cut out my cup and close this as well. I've cut it out now. You can see these are my cups, 2 cups, and this is the main bodies. So here I'm going to close the dart and hold with my masking tape. I've already held the dart for the back as well. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and transfer this to and add this to the skirt part. Okay, so now I have added a fresh paper, and this is my half length, so I'm going to just glue the half length to it so that I can make a complete dress for both front and back. So now it is glued. You can see the line that I have here. This is the waistline. So now from the waistline, which is 16 inches for me, I will measure my hip line. Okay, so this is my hip line, and that is my full length, which is 40 inches. So now from there I'm going to take my hip measurement. The hip is 44 divided by 4 is 11, so I'm marking 11 inches. In this case I'm not going to add any seam allowance to my hip measurement because we won't have a side seam on the skirt part. I'm going to use slash and spread method. You can see that I have seam allowance here, which is why I shaded it. But in the case of the from the waistline downwards, there is not going to be any joining on the side, so that's why I'm not going to add seam allowance. So now I'm just connecting my hip to my waistline here where my actual waistline stops. I'm not including the seam allowance. So now I'm connecting from hip to waist, and then on the hem of the skirt I will simply repeat the same measurement that I took for my hip, which is 11 inches. So here I'm going to mark the same 11 inches, and then with my ruler I'm just going to take this measurement straight down. Okay, I hope you can see that. So the same thing that I have done here, you can see now that we have a complete gown, complete dress. So the same thing that I have done here, I'll go ahead and do to the back as well. On the back, on the hip line, I'm going to mark my hip measurement. But before I do that, remember there is a zipper at the back. So I'm going to mark the 1 inch zipper allowance because I'm still going to need a little bit of it. So I'm marking my 1 inch zipper allowance here, and then I'm connecting it with what I have coming from the half length. I'll do the same thing on the hem and connect that to the hip as well. So I'll take that measurement from where my zipper allowance stops. So this 11 inches, I'm going to mark it here, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the hem, and then I'll connect to my waist just like I did for the front, but I'm connecting here. I'm not going to connect it into the seam allowance. So I hope we get what I am trying to do there. So I'm connecting from my waist to my hip, and then in the case of the hip to hem, I'm using a straight ruler for that. So for both front and back now we have a complete dress. Okay, so for the design that we have in front, I'm going to go over to the hem of the front, okay, which is here, and then on the center front area, remember it stops here. This is where the 40 inches stops. I want, depending on the space that you want to have, that black line that you have at the center, depending on how wide you want it to be. If you want it to be 4 inches wide, then you're going to mark out 2 inches. If you want it to be 6 inches wide, you mark out 3 inches, as the case may be. I want mine to be around 3 to 4 inches, so I can do 3.5 inches, which will leave me at 1.75. So here I'm going to place my tape and mark the 1.75. I'll do the same thing on the hip line. I'll mark the same 1.75 on the hip line, and then I'm going to connect that with my ruler to form a straight line. Okay, so after that I am going to still mark that somewhere here because I want it to be a little bit narrow. So somewhere like 3 inches above the hip line, I will still mark it there and extend the line. So from here now I'll take my curved ruler and connect this to the waistline. I hope you can see it. Okay, so from here I'll get a really nice curve that blends very well, and then I'm going to connect from there to my waistline. So I'm connecting from there to my waistline just like this. So make sure that everything blends well. So you can see what I have there. Okay, you can see the shape that I have there. Sorry, my table is quite small, so you can see the shape that we have. So now for the back as well, Remember, everything just has to meet at this waistline for the side, so that we can easily join them together. So for the back as well, you can see now that this is also where we stopped our allowance on the waistline. So for the back here, on the center back, depending on how deep you want that bust, that V shape that you have at the center back. So here from the waistline, I'm going to come down between 5 to 6 inches. Then I'm going to leave it at 6 inches, and then from there I'm going to take my ruler and then connect back to the waist again for the front. I'm going to connect back to the waist and then draw it inside my zipper allowance. Okay, so that is the shape that we are going to have for the back, and this is the shape that we have for the front. So I'm just going to try to let us have a broader view of what it looks like. So that is the back shape, and this is the front. So you can see the cup area, and then it just goes like that. So now I'm going to cut this out. Remember, I said we are not going to have a seam allowance here, so that's why I do not have it. You can see I stopped my seam allowance on the waistline for the two of them. So now we'll cut this shape that we have and keep, then we'll work on the skirt. So I have cut it. As you can see, this is the front, and that is the line that we have there, and this is the shape we have for the back. I have also cut that out. So what I'm doing now is to keep the half length of the front and back, and then we work on the skirt. So for the skirt, this is the side. For the skirt, this is the center front. Okay, where we have our zipper here is the center back, and this is the side for the back, and this is the side for the front. You can label that so that you don't get confused. So again, I said we are not going to have a joining at the side. Remember, these are the two sides. We are not going to have any joining. There is no seam there, which means I'll just go ahead and close the seam that I am supposed to have there. I'm going to put them together now and hold them together with my masking tape. So this is just like me joining them together, sewing them together. So now we have them as one single piece. You can see what we have there. So the next thing is to make slash and spread lines for the two of them. So you can see I have created my slash line here. I just measured 2 inches interval on the waistline and on the hip and the hem, and I connected to form this straight line. So this is the back, and this is the this is the front, sorry, and this is the back. So this is what it looks like. Sorry, the table is small. Okay, so this is the waistline. This curved shape that you see here is our waistline, and this is what the pattern looks like. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and slash these lines open, and then I'm going to spread this on a fresh paper. So you can spread as much as you want, but I'll just slash each of these lines open. We have done slash and spread a lot on the channel, so I'm sure you understand what it means. So I'll go ahead and slash it open now and spread on a fresh paper. So I have gone ahead to spread it. As you can see, it is very big, so I'm not sure we'll be able to see it. This is the waistline. Okay, so I just traced it out so that it will guide me on how to cut it. You can see I held them with masking tape, and then I'm going to shift to the hem now so that you can see what the hem looks like. So this is the hem. You can see it is wide, and between each of my slash lines I spread by around 6 inches, roughly 6 inches, okay, between each of them. So those are the spaces that I have between each slash lines. So this is the hem. After spreading it, I just connected them together with my curved ruler. So what I did was just to take the curved ruler, and then I'm going to try to match one tail to the other, and then I'll use my marker to join them so that they can all connect together for me to be able to cut them. So now I'll cut out this shape, okay, but roughly this is what it looks like. You can see it's like an umbrella. Okay, that's what it looks like. So I'm going to cut it out now so that we can have something smaller. And then also I noted the part where my front and back join on the waistline. That is this point. I noted it. That's going to be my center line, and then I'm going to draw it to the hem so that's going to be like a guide, because on the hem you can see this is the side front and side back. So this center line here is going to be the center line where they join, and I'm going to make that into a straight line to guide me on how to cut out the patterns. So I have shaped this out now. You can see the waistline here, and this is the hem. So I have shaped out the hem as well, and you can see how everything just rhymes with each other. So now what I'm going to do now is to detach this paper. This center line I have already drawn it out, so that when I detach my paper, I'm not going to get confused. So this slash paper that I have here, I'm going to remove it now because I don't need it anymore, so that I can work on this. So as you're removing your paper here, this is my center front, so I'm going to note that as well. And then on the center back area, I'm going to note it, and I'm going to note where my zipper allowance is. So basically you just need to know the important points. So here, this is the side where the front and back connect, so you can label that as your side as well. So I've removed it. You can see it is quite big. So this is the center back, I have labeled that. This is the side, and this is the center front. So it's like a half circle flare. It's really big because I spread by, I think, 6 to 7 inches. So we don't want yours to be this big. You can spread by maybe between 4 to 5 inches. Okay, so now the next thing is for us to partition this into different designs of ankara that we want to work with. Okay, so like I said, the next thing now is to partition it. So I'll try to raise this a little bit so that we can see what I am doing. So this is the center, okay, the side where the front and back meet. This is the center back, and this is the center front. So now I'll start making those markings from this side where they both meet. So on this side now, I'm going to mark to the front first, and then to the back first, whichever one you want to work with. Remember, when we were shaping it, we started shaping the front from the center area here. Okay, so I'm going to start from that as well. So from this center area, I'm going to measure through this curved line, and then I'm going to mark around 11 inches, which is here. So after marking the 11 inches, I'm going to shift like this. From there, I'm going to come down by around 6.5 inches. Again, I'm going to mark 6 inches or 6.5 inches again as well, and then I'll have around 3 inches on the hem. So that's for the front. For the side where they meet here, I'm going to come down by 4 inches, and then from there I'm going to mark 4.5 inches or 5 inches, and then from there I'll mark 5 inches. From there I'll mark 6, and then I'll mark another 5.5 inches. I'm just partitioning it based on how I want it to be. And then now I'm going to go over to the center back. So for the center back, I'm going to come down by 4 inches first, and then I'll mark another 4 inches. I'll mark another 4 inches. I'll mark another 4, and then I'm going to be left with 2.5 inches. So what you just need to do is to connect those 3 points. You connect each of them from your center back. So if you look at this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points, which means it will be partitioned into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For the side, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well. Okay, I hope you can see it. We have 5 on the side as well. But for the center front, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4. So to complete it, to make the 5th one, somewhere on the hem of the front here, from the center front, I'm going to mark around 10 to 12 inches. Okay, so let's say we are marking 11 inches, and that is what I'm going to be connecting the 5th point that is coming from the back through the middle. So I'm going to connect it to this point. So you can connect this with your free hand, or you connect using your curve. I have already connected mine with the curve. Okay, it's the pencil line that we are seeing. So I'm just going to bold it with my marker so that we're not going to waste too much time. So now this is the first line, and then you need to label it. So from here now, I'm marking the second point. It's going to go through the middle, and then it's going to go to the center back. So you label that too. So that is how you're going to connect all of these points together. So I have connected all of them. Now you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the line that we have. It's quite big. Okay, so this is the hem. You can see the hem. You can see how big it is, and this here is the waistline. So the next thing you need to do now is to cut through all of them. then you are going to start cutting them on your ankara fabric. So you cut 2 of each. Remember, this is just one side of the front and back. We have another side, that's why you have to cut 2. And then when you are cutting, it is important to notch this center line. That's going to guide you when you're sewing it. So I'll go ahead and cut all of them out, and then I'll cut on my fabric. So when you're cutting on your fabric, you have your 1/2 inch seam allowance, because remember, you're going to join them together. So for the lining of the skirt, you can first use this one to cut out your lining before you start slashing it, or you can decide to cut your lining when you have joined the ankara fabric together. So you just place the ankara on the lining and use them to cut each other. I've got to cut it on my fabric. You can see I have 5 different ankara fabrics here. So this is the first one. I'm able to recognize it because I labeled it. It's the smallest. So this ankara that I used for the first one is the same ankara that I'm going to use for the sleeve and the cups as well. So I'm using the same ankara for that. So this is the first one. You can see that it is small. So this is the second one. I used a different ankara for that. This is the third, this is the fourth, and this is the fifth. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and sew it. Remember, I said you should add seam allowance, so I added 1/2 inch on both sides to sew it, and I notched it on the center point. So you are going to be sewing from the center point. It's going to be a guide for you. You mark it, you sew the center front to the front, and then you sew to the back. Then you pick the next one, you do the same thing. So I'll go ahead and join all of these pieces together. And then for the main bodies, I have cut it out on my fabric, and then I added interfacing. So this is the front. I added interfacing to the front alone because of the cup. So I'm going to trim the excess interfacing that I have off. And then these are the cups as well. I have gone up to cut my cup, and I iron this flat so you can see what the cup looks like. I can see the depth that we have. So I'm going to be placing this cup inside here, just like this. I'll go ahead and sew it, and I also cut lining for it. So these are the cups for the lining, and this is the lining of the main bodies. Okay, it's cut the same way. I did not add interfacing to that. So that's for the front. For the back as well, I have cut the back. Okay, I've cut it. This is it. This is the lining, and this is the main fabric, and this is the lining for the back as well. So I just use the back lining to turn the main fabric, and I'll do the same thing for the front as well. So I'll do all of this and bring it back to show us how to sew the skirts back to the main bodies. So I have joined the 5 of them together, and this is what it looks like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I have 2 of these, one for each side of the bodies. So this is the second one for the other one as well. So you just iron it so that it can be flat. Remember, you had a lot of seams there, so you want to iron this. Probably open your seam allowance and make it as flat as possible. I also used one of the patterns to cut out lining for the 2 of them. So these are the lining for the skirt. So now we're going to sew the skirt to the upper part. For the upper part, I have sewn in my cups. So this is what it looks like now. I have sewn in my cups, and I turned the neckline of the back as well. So this is the back. You can see this is the neckline, this is the zipper area. It is neatly turned as well, and this is what it looks like on the inside. I have used my lining to turn the front and back on the inside. So this is what it looks like. So the next thing now is to bring in our pieces. So you bring in your skirt, and then I'm going to look for the one that is okay. So this is the front, you can clearly see, and this is the back with the zipper allowance. So now the one that goes to the front, I'm going to pin it to the front. So in pinning it, you can see this notch that you see that I have here will still assist me. So I'm going to match the notch to the side seam, and then I'm going to pin to the hem. Okay, so you can see, so I just have like 1/2 inch space to turn, just like I turned this as well. So you pin to the front and back and sew. So you do this for the 2 sides, then I'll bring it back to show us how we're going to turn it. So I have sewn it now. You can see I notched. You can see the notch part. That notch part is the side seam. Okay, you match it to the side seam, and you sew to the right and to the left. If you sew, you can see that you are just going to have half an inch left here to turn the hem of the ankara as well. So this is the back. This is what it looks like, and this is what it looks like on the outer part. You can see how beautiful it is turning out. So you can just go ahead and line this, but if you want it to be a little bit puffy, okay, if you don't mind, you can just use your lining to cover it up. But if you want it to be a little bit puffy, you can also use a little net to enhance that. This is like a hard net, but it is not so hard. So you just need to measure the area that you're going to sew it to, and you cut 2 or 3 of it. And the length you're going to need for this, I think I used about, this is around 12 to 15 inches. I can't find my tape right now. This is about 12 to 15 inches in length. So now, to know where you're going to start applying this net, it should not exceed this. Remember, for the front especially, it was curved like this, so you can use your net as a determinant. Okay, so you can start from somewhere here. Okay, so you just leave enough space for your fabric, so you can start from here. So now from the side seam, you can measure between 3 to 5 inches downwards, and then from there you start placing your net. So what you are going to do now is to gather the net on this ankara part here like this. You start gathering it. You gather from the front all the way to the back. So after gathering the net, you pick your lining. So now this lining, remember the net was gathered like this on the ankara side. It will just go down like this. So this lining is what is going to cover everything up for you. So you pin the lining from the center back or from the front, and then you pin and sew all around. Then you're going to use it to cover it. So when you're sewing, you sew through your waistline, you sew to the front, you sew around the hem for me, and then I sew the center back. So for the center back, I just left small space to turn it out. Let me show you with the other side. I have done this for the other side. You can see that it is neatly finished. So you can see that all these rough edges is neatly concealed with my lining. So what I did was to fold my lining over just like I explained, and then I sew on the side, I sew on the hem as you have seen, and then I sew here. So here on the zipper area, I just left a small space to turn it out. That was where I turned it out. That's why I have something this neat and beautiful. And my net is inside as well. Let me show you. Excuse me. So you can see the net was sewn on the ankara side, and it just came down like that. So this lining is what is covering everything up for me. So I'll go and do that. After that, the next thing you need to do is just to sew the center back, fix your zipper, and then you sew your sleeve of choice, and the dress is ready. So I'll do all of this now and bring it back to show us. Okay, so I have joined everything now. You can see this is what the full view of the dress looks like. You can see the two sides is joined together now. This is the flare part of it, and you can see that it is neatly finished both in and out. So let me turn to the wrong side so that we can see what it looks like. So you can see that it is neat on the wrong side as well. So this is what you want to achieve by the time you are done. And then I went ahead to embellish with these cup chains that I have. Okay, so you can leave it plain or you can just do the same thing. So I just placed it along these lines to just beautify it a little bit, and also on the cup area and the neckline on both front and back. So after that, I fixed this puff sleeve on it. It's a puff sleeve without elastic, and you can see how beautiful and puffy it is. The tutorial on how I fixed this is already uploaded as well. I'm going to drop the link. If you want to learn how I did this, you can check that link out. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. I'll take it to the mannequin now so that we can see what it looks like. So this is what the dress looks like after joining everything, and you can see the sleeve that we attached is just a puff sleeve. The tutorial is already uploaded on the channel. The link will be dropped in the description box if you want to learn how I made it. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. I will see you in the next one. Bye.